Recording in progress.
Always love that flag. I got a big flag in my office, but yours is cooler.
You know, I got this at Hobby Lobby. That's serious.
I'm sure.
It was like, you know, $20 at Hobby Lobby.
Yeah, I got a big one I have on my wall. Can't easily show it to you, but it's I got it off Amazon or something, but I just love it.
Yeah,
Let's see, can I turn my flag? Here we go.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I've used this flag many a times, but it's got a Thomas Jefferson quote on it, so you can't see it because it's really like you can kind of see.
Yeah, I can kind of see it a little bit. Yeah,
a little bit, but you know, people are coming in. Paul says you're the myth and the legend, Roger.
Yeah, just tell my wife and kids.
Folks, we're gonna give it another minute, let people come in here. Thanks for everyone who actually showed up on time. We're very grateful. Like I said, very interactive. This webinar will be available for everyone to watch after the fact, so you can do that. You know, I think people are webinared out though, Roger.
Yeah.
You know, I'm about to announce next week that I'm going back to doing live podcasts. So the people who are here get to hear it first.
Yeah, you know what? I like podcasts. I'm starting to like podcasts more than any other form, just because of the free flow of conversation,
right?
And it gives you context that maybe is not possible in a webinar.
I very much agree. That is one thing I absolutely really do enjoy with podcasts and doing kind of my shows is just a free flow, fun conversation that you never know where you're going to end up, but it's good. It's always good. All right, here's what I'm going to do. For all of those that are in here, like I said, this is very interactive. Roger and I are wondering, how many of you actually use MFA? So the poll should pop up on your screen. Give it a chance. We're at 100% so far, Roger. Everyone's using MFA. Everyone's using MFA.
You ready for this? I bet the average person is using like 4 or 5 MFA, different MFAs, like one for your bank, one for Facebook, one at work, one to enter your building, maybe start your car, and you have 5 to 7 passwords you use on 170 websites. Like it's everybody's using everything.
Yeah, we'll leave the poll up for just a few more seconds as more people join. If you're joining now, there should be a poll right in front of you. We want to know how many of you guys actually have MFA activated on your work network. We're at 100%, meaning deployments at 100% based on our small sample size.
Well, we don't have to worry about hacking anymore. All the hackers and malware.
All right, guys, thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate it. Shortest webinar in history. Everyone's secure. I'll give this another. I'll give it another second, but we're getting some really funny comments here. And like I said, this is an interactive webinar. Roger and I, when we were planning this out, we're like, no PowerPoints, right? And he's like, no PowerPoints. And I'm like, thank you. Grateful, right? We do have a cool video I'll share in just a second that you guys can actually watch. And I am going to go ahead and shut down the poll here. So we are at 100%. 100%. We have more polls coming, but Roger, start off with the basics. Why is MFA important? Because some people don't quite take it for what that is.
So, so it requires that you have 2 or more authentication factors to prove that you own an identity. Traditionally, it would be just a login name and a password, which is really only one form. So multi-factor says it should be 2 different types of authentication secrets that you have to provide to prove that you have ownership of the identity that you're going to use in a particular system. The best systems, you're going to have 2 different types, like you'll have something like a password or a PIN, and something you have. or R, like biometrics or something, you have like a token, the idea being that it's harder for a hacker to both, let's say, trick you out of your password and also steal your hardware token or something like that. It without a doubt, and I wrote a book on hacking MFA. It talks about 50 plus ways to hack MFA, but without a doubt, MFA significantly diminishes some forms of hacking. Like if there's hacking that tries to steal your password and you don't have a password, it's just not going to work. And so if I was to take if I was to say, okay, here's 100% of hacking, how much does MFA take a bite out of that apple? I don't know what the number is. I don't think anybody does, but I bet you it's somewhere like 25 to 30%. So it's not everything. It's not the biggest thing. Social engineering plays a bigger part in that apple, but 30% is a pretty big chunk, right? So that's a great thing.
It's a risk reduction, right? So if we look at, a lot of people approach MFA as another risk factor. What you're talking about reduces the risk for an incident, but it doesn't necessarily prevent them. We've still seen MFA be very successful for some things when it comes to hacking.
Yeah, so I over my 34-year career, probably 20 years of it, I was installing MFA, a lot of smart cards, tokens, all kinds of stuff. So I would say I've installed hundreds of MFA solutions, usually going into people's environments where they are compromised by some advanced persistent threat or something one or more times, like, oh my God, we've been hacked, we need to get MFA. So to go in and put in MFA, and this is what I tell people, every single one of those companies still got hacked after I put in the MFA. Not because of the MFA, usually it's because of social engineering and unpatched software. But so MFA works, significantly decreases risk, but if you don't do the other basics, you're probably still going to end up hacked. Because when I say it reduces the risk by 30%, well, it means you still have to worry about the 70%.
So we've got some really funny comments here, and I've promised everyone when I was promoting this that it's going to be very interactive. So let me ask you this though, real quick, because I'm looking at questions and so forth and comments, and you guys can submit questions in the Q&A section, and we'll take those as we go along. I promise you that, very, very interactive, and so forth. But Roger, when we look at specifically talking, right, kind of a good strategy for MFA, there's a bunch of different challenges around multi-factor authentication, right? And we see that not every organization still uses it. Like here, I think we have a group of security practitioners and security people, but I guarantee if we took this and we went out and I did this on a YouTube live at 9 p.m. on a Thursday, and we're asking, the hundreds of people who tune into those, what are you doing? How many of you guys actually use MFA? The number would be much, much lower. Where do you see MFA's position as we kind of go forth now? Because people will say, I don't need MFA, I've got VPN.
Yeah, the other thing is just to save people VPN, while ransomware is going rampant, attacking unpatched VPN all over the world. But which is, insert one defense and it becomes a new attack vector, right? In a different way. I will say that I really think that we are seeing this sudden increase in MFA. Like there's been this, my first MFA experience was RSA secure IDs like 20, 30 years ago, whenever they got invented. And it really has been this small thing and the steady increase of MFA. I really believe literally the last few months, significant increase driven by ransomware and really cyber insurance companies, cyber insurance companies are saying, if you have MFA, you can possibly get insurance. If you don't have MFA, you don't get insurance. And that is going to be driving a ton of people to adopting MFA. So I think we're going to see a lot more. You're still going to have, I don't know what the adoption rate of MFA is in corporate world. I assume 25, 30% or something like that. If you all the small businesses really haven't picked it up, it's going to, I think, get really big, like 70%, somewhere in there, and you only have like the mom and pops and things like that that aren't doing it. It's being driven by insurance. Is just, even if you don't want cybersecurity insurance, if you want to do business with somebody that has it, you have to do MFA. So a lot of even smaller orgs are picking it up. There's been a significant increase in MFA adoption, and I'm seeing this sudden acceleration just in the last couple of weeks and months that is mind-boggling. I mean, just literally going up, exponentially.
Yeah, so Matt says, I believe the increase in MFA massively is driven also by the delay in SMB to adopt things corporations have had for 15 years. Kind of combining it with insurance, it is definitely driving it forward. Do you think insurance has a big play on that?
Yeah. But I think insurance is the #1 driver right now. Insurance, and maybe, there's increasing, federal guidelines and stuff like that. If you look at, Biden's executive order and all that sort of stuff, and if you look at what came out of CISO, even recently, how to fight ransomware, they oftentimes are including use MFA, because, it's there's a lot of, the #1 cause of ransomware is social engineering by far. #2 is probably unpatched software, but then you have a lot of password guessing against RDP, remote desktop protocol terminals. Either they know the password or they're doing password guessing against it. And if you use MFA, it kind of blocks off that piece of it. And so, you're seeing a lot of people, a lot of guides, regulations say use MFA. Here's my problem with it, though, is I went to a cybersecurity insurance webinar, 2 of them recently. I've been doing a lot of cyber insurance stuff lately. I got a whole chapter in my book, my latest ransomware book on cyber insurance. But I went to the thing, and the talk was being given by a really well-known cyber insurance guy from a large company. And he's like, I really love Roger's talk. I went up before him. And he goes, Roger's talking about social engineering. It certainly is a big thing we have to worry about. It's the biggest thing you need to worry about. And then his next slide was MFA prevents 99% of ransomware. I'm not making this up. I was like, ah. And then he went to the next slide, and was the 8 ways to stop ransomware, none of which talked about blocking social engineering, which is what he just agreed with me was the #1 problem. There is this jump on the bandwagon where people think that MFA is going to save them. And not only this, but most people that use MFA, even a lot of admins and stuff, are shocked that I can send you a phishing email and bypass 90% of MFA solutions out there. They're shocked. Most people think I've got this hardware token, or I've got this thing, and it means I'm less likely to be phished. And it does mean you're less likely to be phished. Does not mean that you can't be easily phished if someone decides to do it.
Very true. Speaking of that, we do have the Kevin Mitnick video of hacking MFA. I want to play for everyone here. Let me share.
Yeah, this is a great example of it.
Let me share. I think we are all good. Can everyone see this video? And
Kevin Mitnick, KnowBe4's Chief Hacking Officer. So I'm logged into my Gmail account, and if you take a look in the second email here, I'll go ahead and open it. It appears to be an email from LinkedIn. And ordinarily, when somebody wants to join your network on LinkedIn, LinkedIn will actually send an email to your email address notifying you of that. And if you're interested, you can go ahead and click interested, log into your LinkedIn account, and authorize that person to actually become a connection. So if we take a look here, we have an email from LinkedIn that says, Kevin, I've read about your adventures in Ghost in the Wires and so on, and this person wants to join my network. But this is actually a phishing attack. If we take a look here at where the email is originating from, it's not at linkedin.com, it's at this domain called llnked.com, which people might overlook. So let's go ahead and pretend that we're the victim here and go ahead and click on interested. And what that is going to do, it's going to redirect us to the LinkedIn website to go ahead and log in. But let's move this over to the right and let that load. And if you take a look over here, we have a blank white page, which is going to become very important in a moment. And this is the attacker terminal session. So let's go ahead and bring back the virtual machine that's now connected to LinkedIn to authenticate, because we, again, clicked on interested in the email. So we'll go ahead and put in a username, Johnny Boy at mitnicksecurity.com. And now we're going to go ahead and put in our secret password. And then we're going to go ahead and click sign in. And when we click sign in, it's not going to allow us to log in. What LinkedIn is going to do is request our two-factor authentication code that LinkedIn is going to actually send to my mobile phone. And in a moment, you should hear a sound that the text message was received on my mobile phone. So let's go ahead and click sign in. And here we go. It's telling us that two-step authentication is enabled. We just heard a message come into my mobile device. We're going to uncheck this box that says recognize this device in the future. And I'm going to open my mobile device to take a look and see what the text message is, or what the code is rather. So the code here is 421476. We're going to go ahead and click verify. And when we do so, it's going to log us into my LinkedIn account. So now we're logged into the LinkedIn account, but let's take a look at the attacker session over here on the left. So we're going to scoot this over to the right. And over here, what we have is what we're able to intercept. So we're able to intercept the email address, which is johnnyboy@mitnicksecurity.com. We're also able to intercept the password to the account, which is KnowBeforeRocks. And over here, this is not the actual 6-digit code that was intercepted, because you can't really use the 6-digit code again, the second factor. But what we're able to do is intercept the session cookie. And if you're able to steal the session cookie, or if rather the attacker is able to do so, they don't even need your username or password or second factor code. They could simply load the session key into a browser and they actually become you. So let me show you how this works. We're going to highlight the cookie. We're going to copy it to the clipboard, and then we're simply going to open up Chrome in incognito mode. And incognito mode just means with privacy. So now we're going to go to the real LinkedIn website. When we go here, obviously we're not authenticated. Now it's, wants us to log in with our credentials, but we don't have to do so. We're going to go ahead and go into developer tools. We're going to go into the console, and what we're going to paste into the console is the session cookie that we stole from the victim, which was myself, by the way. I'm going to enter it. I'm going to go ahead and close the session. Now, all I simply have to do to be logged into the victim's account with their session cookie is simply hit refresh now. So I hit refresh, and here we are. We've logged in, or rather hacked my own account.
So yeah, that's, when Kevin first did that demo a couple of years ago, we had dozens to hundreds of people calling us, emailing us, wanting to know if Kevin had reported this as a new common vulnerability exploit, CVE. And I was perplexed. I was like, what do you mean? This is something that's been done for like 30 years. This is the opposite of new. But I was surprised. Not only was it relatively new people, it was people who've been in the industry for 20 years. But I'm here to tell you that that particular type of attack, where if I can convince you to go to a fake website, bypasses 85, 90, 95% of MFA solutions. Like, it's just a simple phishing thing. So this whole idea that if I have MFA, it's going to protect me, is kind of wild. And let me say, some will, like FIDO2. If you have an MFA that only works with a particular website, so it doesn't, if you have MFA, let's say FIDO2 solution, for example, you actually have to register the website to your FIDO device and the FIDO device to the website. And when you go to that website, that FIDO device will not activate per se to give you the right code. It just doesn't work. You're like, why is it not working? Well, it's because it's not the right website. And so if you have site or device registration, it prevents that. Of course, there's 5 other attacks I can do against those, but the vast majority of MFA is susceptible to a simple phishing email. And most people, when they see this video for the first time, looks like almost everybody in our thing had seen this before, knew about this. But the general public, most admins, sysadmins, they're shocked when they see how easy it happened.
Yeah, I think there's a, you brought up right before the video, someone saying, MFA prevents 99%. I can't tell you how many CISOs I've seen that on their board presentation. if we just enable MFA across the company, we reduce our risk by 99%.
Yeah, 99% of ransomware. Just gone.
And
Let me
then
say, I'm sorry. I was just shocked that the cyber insurance industry, it has a bunch of accounting nerds, actuarial nerds that are supposed to look at the data before they then say something or give a policy. And they're literally just buying this MFA saves us hook. And MFA is good, but it doesn't save us. You know?
It does not. So here's a question to the audience. Do you think MFA is a strong security feature that helps block cyber attacks? It's a yes or no. Take your time. Give it an answer. It's now that you've seen that demo, I'm curious to see how people answer. We'll leave this up for about another minute and then I'll shut it down. But you'll be, I'm watching the results. It's, it's fascinating to see the results of the poll.
So somebody asked, did the Euro have HTTPS? I forget in that demo, but let me say most of the man-in-the-middle attacks, they don't.
They did.
Okay, yeah. Most of the man-in-the-middle ones don't have that, and your device doesn't care. I mean, unless you notice, like people go, well, how do you prevent this attack? Well, by paying attention to the URL. And you're supposed to note, like in most real-world attacks, there isn't HTTPS, but these days, everybody gets HTTPS, uses a Let's Encrypt cert that's trusted by default. And so, it's something, I think malware websites have a higher HTTPS adoption than the real world now.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. And we'll talk about HTTPS here in just a second. 10 more seconds and I'm closing the poll. If you haven't voted, vote now. Do you think MFA is a strong security feature to help block cyber attacks? And 3, 2, 1. It's a 50-50 tie.
Well, and let me say, it is strong, right? I mean, MFA, everybody should use MFA where you can. And this is what I tell you, it significantly diminishes some types of attacks. And that's a good thing. It doesn't even prevent all types of authentication attacks. So MFA could only potentially possibly prevent authentication attacks. And that's one of 9, 10 types of attacks that we have. And even then, really only a subset of those. But it's still, I think the #1 phishing attack is, faking you out of your password. And if you use MFA and you don't even know your password, well, you can't be faked out of it. So I think it is a good cyber defense. It just is not the 99% thing that I'm seeing everywhere.
See, I got to tell you something very fun, very interesting that I've seen with this is we all know our email addresses and passwords are out there, right? At this point in time, if you think that someone doesn't have at least your username to get into any one of these major public websites, I think you live in La La Land, and I'd like to join you there. #1, because I think that's a better world. But then they have our usernames and passwords. And it's very, very easy to phish you out of a 2-factor authentication. And I'll tell you something really funny. So, in preparation for the Azar family expansion, I've been decluttering my home. And in the declutter, I've been posting a lot of stuff to sell. And some of the stuff I'm putting out to sell, it's really funny how sometimes I'll get a hit right away and someone will say, well, give me your phone number. I want to call you or text you right now. And I'm like, well, hang on, give me yours. And then they disappear. Wow. Right. But here's the thing. Here's the other thing I did. I went in, and this was on Facebook Marketplace, and I created a Google number and I just put it out there for those scammers. And so all of a sudden I started getting codes, 2-factor authentication codes for that number on my Google Voice device, on the app. And I was all like, that's interesting. And I started looking, I'm like, so they're using this for one of two things. Either either they have some sort of username and password tied to this phone number and they need the MFA, or they're taking this MFA code and they're trying to get, like you said, the cookie session ID somewhere in order to be able to get in there. But, or the final reason for everyone out there is they're trying to create a VoIP number And a lot of VoIP registration numbers require MFA to show that you actually own it.
Wow. Hey, you ready for I think the supreme irony is I get a ton of emails from people that want to hire me to hack because they've lost their Facebook, Twitter, Instagram account. So someone phished them, got their password, stole the account. Then the attacker turns on MFA, and none of the major providers provide a way to recover your account once MFA has been enabled by this attacker. So it's funny, like MFA doesn't protect you all that well, but apparently it really protects the attacker once they've stolen your account.
How is that not a surprise to some people, right? That kind of leads me to the next my next question to you is, when we look at threat actors, they're very creative. They're a very a worthy adversary a lot of times, but they look at MFA and they look at different ways to beat it. What are some of the ways you think MFA is most vulnerable?
Well, I mean, certainly, I just think just conceptually, people are over reliant upon how much protection it gives you. There's different MFAs, like anything that's based upon your phone number, SMS based, voice based, that sort of stuff, because the phone system is not a very reliable authenticator. I can fake being any phone number I want to be. It's easily SIM swapping attacks. I can pay $16 to some random company, get your number switched to mine. The underlying protocol behind most public switch phone networks is called SSL7, Secure Signaling 7 or something, hasn't been updated in decades. It's super vulnerable. And I think hackers and law enforcement love that it's super vulnerable. Both sides enjoy that we're not upgrading the security. And let me say biometrics, like I had my fingerprints stolen in the 2015 OPM attack or Chinese APT.
2014.
Yeah. So, and my wife did. She'd worked in a shipyard when she was like 15, and she had her fingerprints stolen. Like, how can you ever rely upon any authentication system that requires my fingerprints, right? Especially remotely. And
so I'm going to launch this next poll here. What type of MFA is most secure? Because we're about to dig into that. And so I don't want Roger to give you guys the answers yet. So let's see what people say. I'm going to leave this up for a few minutes while you guys vote, but I do have a question here from Ian, and it says, just a query, in case of HTTPS, do we need to verify even the certificate in case of the URL does not have the typo? Most of the time, Cyrillic letters are used with phishing along with a fake cert.
So I have seen that attack. What's that called? But where they replace it with different types of letters. That's a homographic attack. Homographic, a couple of names for it. Homography attack, where they replace, like they take a Cyrillic A to stand for it. They used to be theoretical attacks, and I didn't think they were real attacks. And Microsoft a couple of months ago said we've actually seen real attacks where they switched out and did some phishing attacks. Most of the browsers now detect that sort of thing and will warn you, at least the most popular browsers, and they're really not very popular. But yeah, so I don't. What are the chances of you getting a certificate where it's one of these fake Cyrillic replacements? It's probably 1 in 10 million. Most of them are just going to be sound-alike, look-alike websites that are using, PayPal.menu.com, right? Where they're just putting the word somewhere in there. Those are, so I tend to say there's a lot of threats. Focus on the things that are most likely to get you. Than worrying about the small things. So that is the homographic attacks. Or I used to go, oh, it's theoretical, and then Microsoft announced they discovered like 20 of them. I'm like, oh, okay, all done out of Nigeria, I think, or Africa. But that was interesting.
That's it's interesting you bring up Nigeria. I'll touch with you base offline on that, but I want to go ahead and close this poll. And here's the results: 70% think that token is the most secure. Second place is an app like Google or Microsoft Authenticator. Third place is a call. And last place is SMS or text.
I agree with the last place. Yeah, like I avoid SMS, although SMS, you shouldn't use SMS MFA. Like even in the digital identity guidelines, that was NIST special publication 800-63 back in 2017 said you shouldn't use SMS-based MFA to protect sensitive data. And I did have an SMS vendor go, wait a minute, they didn't say don't use it. They just said, and I was like, no, what they did say was you can't use it on the two most secure forms. So you could use it on the weakest data that you had to secure, and we reserve the right to remove it at any future time. I'm like, it is not a strong endorsement.
So think of banks today. Banks today, right? Part of your login is an SMS. They won't even let you use an app.
Well, you know, interesting enough, like my bank has an app, and it's a really fairly secure app. I like phone apps. If you have to, you know, because they're not tied to your phone number, you actually have to log into them initially. So if someone steals your phone number, they don't get your phone app. And even if they install the phone app, they'd have to authenticate to be able to use the phone app. So I've got a phone app, but if I'm not directly using that app, it sends all the MFA via text. And so SMS-based MFA, literally recommended by the US government, don't really use. And yet it is easily the most popular type of MFA. And you do not even have your choice about whether or not you're going to use it. And then what I love is they then give me the password reset questions. Like, what's your mother's maiden name? I'm like, or, you know, what's your favorite vet? I'm like, please, what's your favorite car? I'm like, literally all the answers to those things are either easily discoverable on the internet or take me less than 100 guesses, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, I love the answer. I love the secret questions, but you know, banks still use SMS for authentication. I think that's a problem, and that's something where we're falling behind on the 8 ball. Marin has a very funny, I think, very interesting and funny question. They say, so isn't AI going to solve this issue and everything else that plagues humanity?
I do. I love that that person knew it was a joke to start with. Although I do worry about, I think it's going to be, I think the future of security is a bunch of humans monitoring good AI bots and the bad guys using bad AI bots. And then we're monitoring them on some type of SOC network. And the human intelligence will always be needed. But I think there are going to be these threat hunter bots. And then you already have these like bad bots that are like, oh, this is an Apple machine. I need to download all the Apple exploits. You know, if like, oh, this is a Windows machine or whatever. And so I do think the future is going to be some more AI type things, these bots fighting each other out. But there will always, in my experience, at least half the vulnerabilities that I've ever found in my career have been that I found, not some automated tool, not some AI thing. The human, I think it's very difficult for human ingenuity to be duplicated with AI, because sometimes it's our mistakes that give us our progress.
See, so here's my problem with token, because this is where 70% of the people went, right? I have a challenge with token-based MFA. My previous world, I was in fintech. I had a bunch of fintech companies, and I had a bunch of tokens. I literally had 2 boxes of Altoids that were empty of Altoids, but had nothing but those hard case shell tokens inside of them. And on the back of everyone was, you know, because I had so many of them, because that was the security. The only way I could ever do a wire transfer, this was for wire transfers, not accessing the account. They had no MFA deployed at the time. This is 7-8 years ago, right? So before everyone goes crazy. But 7-8 years ago, I didn't have to do that. But in order to do a bank transfer, I had to have a token. And the code would be how I would authenticate myself that I'm the one doing the wire transfer from wherever I am. And I had 15 tokens in Altoid boxes in my bag. And that was not practical in any sort of way. I mean, I used to have to sit down, and when I would have to do like wire transfers, it looked like I needed, you know, I had really bad breath because I had 2 Altoid boxes out. I had 15 different MFA devices in front of me, 15 different tokens. And I would be like, all right, this is the token for this account. So I'd have to log into the account, initiate the transfer, put in the code, put it back into Altoid box, do that. And, you know, sometimes it's not business operationally sound. And I think when we look at MFA, you know, you've talked about, you know, not doing SMS, but SMS is a lot easier than tokens, because if I'm the CEO of the company and I need this token and I just jumped on a plane and I don't have it, you know, I'm always going to have my phone, but I'm never really going to have my token everywhere.
Yeah, you know, so my best story about let me say hardware tokens, most of them could be man in the middle, just like Kevin showed, the vast majority of them. But ignoring that, my favorite story is once you deploy any MFA on a wide scale, it's amazing how badly the average human being is at using them. There's this great, I've got it in my book, Hacking MFA book, but it's like a Harvard study or Stanford study or Princeton study, but they sent out 100 tokens to people in a study, and all you had to do was a YubiKey, I believe, plug in the YubiKey and press the button, right? Which is not multi-factor, but anyways, they found out it was like a 30% failure rate on people being able to operate these things. A lot of people broke them by plugging them upside down. Some people thought they were fingerprint scanners and would try to, swipe their fingerprint. But the amazing thing was when they were finished at the end, they went back a month later and checked with all 100 people. None of the 100 people decided to use the token anymore. It was to log them into Gmail, I'm pretty sure. So nobody, not one person, felt like they could be bothered to use that token if they didn't have to. And it was something like 20% of the people gave the token away to somebody else, like it was a memory card, like it was a memory stick, which meant when that person plugged it in their computer, it then logged them into that person's account. I'm like, you just gave away your, like that's, and I would say phone as a token is what they call it. Those are becoming super more popular because people don't want to have to deploy the hardware tokens. There's breakage and loss and blah, 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 blah. But, it's, so you're seeing a lot more phone as a token solutions out there. I can't tell you which one's more or less secure. Your phone is more likely to be taken over by a malware Trojan or something than your hardware device. But to be honest with you, I like both. I like phone as a token solutions if it's not SMS based. If it's not attached to your phone number only, I'm all right with it. But SMS based, or like just with SMS, I can just fake being anybody. Hi, I'm from your bank and we've detected an attack and we're going to send you a PIN code. Need you to tell us what the PIN code is. And then you tell them the PIN code and they take over your account. Hardware tokens, there's good and bad hardware tokens. I like hardware tokens based upon standards. There's a bunch of open standards called Oath, OATH, and Orca and stuff like that. But then you got a lot of hardware tokens that have homemade crypto, and the numbers really aren't that good, and they don't have account lock. I'm amazed at how many hardware tokens I came across on just yesterday, where it's asking you for a 4 or 6-digit code that doesn't care how many times you guess. And so if you can automate that in a browser, using some web API, you can actually go through all the numbers very quickly. I broke into one just yesterday. So our passwords have account lockout, but the hardware token where you put the number in, so many of them don't. And so you can guess literally tens of thousands of times before the timeout comes, guess the code and get in. So it all depends on the deployment.
But that's the thing. So deployment is often underrated. Now, for everyone who's watching us live, I just want to point out, I put a link to Roger's book, Hacking MFA, in the comments. So you can go to the link and you can order his book, Hacking MFA. I don't have a deal with Roger. I don't get commission, but his book's awesome.
Thanks, man.
It's a really good book. It's something you want to have on your shelf. It has good excerpts over there. Oftentimes, by the way, so you talked about the 99%. I just want to point it out here to a lot of people. You'll go talk to one of the executives in your company, one of the business stakeholders, right? And I'm sorry, I put the link for myself and you, Roger, the two people who don't need it because we already have it.
I just bought it. I just rebought.
There you go.
Yes.
Sorry, everyone. Here it is. So I had a train of thought. So you'll have stakeholders who'll be at an event, at a conference, or would have listened to someone, they know someone who's a vendor or a security expert, or what I like to call now the newly founded security experts. And they'll say, well, I heard that if we did MFA, then we'd stop 99% of all attacks, right? Because that pretty much secures it. The book has some really good excerpts that you can really fundamentally push back on in a business way without really undermining that person's intelligence, which at some point or another should be, but nonetheless. I
see a question there. Someone's asking, if a person's Google account is compromised, even though MFA was deployed, will it be possible for the attacker to access the websites where the victim used Google single sign-on to sign in? The answer is probably yes, because the MFA is to protect your access to the identity. And if they bypass the MFA and now have access to your identity, it's that identity that controls the tokens that allows them. But it depends on the website, how it's implemented, because even when you hear like multi-factor, there are many websites will still look at other conditional things. Are they coming from the same browser, the same type of device? Are they coming from the same country they normally log into? Like a lot of people don't realize, but Gmail and Microsoft and all that, they literally look at hundreds of things. Like they even look at how fast you type in a password or a PIN. Where do you normally go when you log in? Can you have logged in from Tampa, Florida, and now been in China 2 hours later? You know, are you doing the types of things that you could have been doing? So it's a very complex answer to say yes to, but in most cases, yes. But there are times that it would not work. But remember this also, this is a big thing that most people, I would say 99% of computer security people don't understand what I'm getting ready to say. So this is a super important thing. No matter how you log in to whatever you're logging into, a website, a laptop, let's assume you're logging into a Windows laptop, Apple laptop, no matter how you sign in, so whether it's a password, a fingerprint scan, a hardware token, a phone device, once you log in, the access control token you get in Windows, let's say is a Kerberos ticket or an NTLM token, or on a website, it's a text-based cookie like Kevin showed you. Those are the same no matter how you logged in. You don't get, like I used to think that, oh, if I scanned in with my fingerprint, that my fingerprint kind of went around the network when I was accessing that secret database. Somehow that secret database, is that Roger's finger? No, it just got a Kerberos ticket. Once you successfully log on in, then your identity gets this license that says you have successfully logged on in. And if somebody takes control of your identity, they get that license just like you got, and they can reuse it in the same way that you could use it. So it's, regardless of how you log on in, once you've successfully logged on in, everything else after that is really identically the same.
So we've got a few questions in the Q&A, and I think one's more of a comment, and probably Paul's looking for your confirmation. I choose token-based on-RIM PKI technology. Guess I was going further, nerd.
Token-based on what?
Token, RIM PKI technology. Token based on RIM PKI technology.
I don't know what RIM is.
I think research in motion. Wouldn't that be
okay?
BlackBerry?
Okay. Yeah. So this, I tell you, I can hack any MFA solution, and not just me, thousands of people. Any MFA solution, at least a handful of different ways, and most of them far more than that. And I have people all the time. Oh, can I hack? Can I hack? Can you hack this? Yes, yes, yes. In my book, in one of the chapters, I take the most secure MFA solution, a Bloomberg B unit device. I love it. It's when you log into Bloomberg terminals are like $15,000 or $25,000 a year. They have this multi-factor device that actually has a light reader in it, a diopter. But like you go to that, you load the application, you log in with your login name and password. You have to fingerprint scan yourself into the device, and then the application flashes lights to the device. It sends a code through light flashes to the device. So you're authenticating yourself biometrically to the device. You're authenticating yourself to the application. The application is authenticating itself to the device. It really is this kick-ass thing. I've loved them. I've worked with them for years. I consulted for Bloomberg many years ago in the past. Love these devices. They're hackable. They're hackable. I mean,
Well,
it's just.
I mean, so you know, I want to point out the fact that biometrics is the worst kind of relation to MFA if it's not device-based, right? And Al has a question here, and he goes, with Google or Microsoft Authenticator, the way someone would get your code is just to have access to your email and phone number, right?
A bunch of different ways. The Kevin Mitnick man-in-the-middle attack works against both of those really well. So if I can, there's 10 ways I can think of to get that code. Not to mention both of them, both Microsoft and Google have these vacation travel codes that never expire. So. Right. So if they get a hold of those, and the Google Authenticator, the QR code they send you, that initial, that's called, it's called a seed value that helps generate the instance to be unique to you. That never expires. So most of them expire in an hour, a day. Google Authenticator's QR code never expires. The QR code is nothing but a number, an encoded 80-bit number, which is weak. It really should be 128-bit because people can guess it, but it never expires. So it can be guessed at fairly easily, cryptographically thinking wise. 80-bit key is pretty weak, but it never expires, which means I can, for as long as you have it, start guessing that number. Or a lot of attackers go into people's email and they look for the QR codes from the Google Authenticator setups that are, you'll have a different QR code for each system, your work system, and maybe some other systems on the internet. They never expire. They get hold of that QR code, they make an additional instance, and then they're as if they were you. And let me say, they're not bad. I don't hate Google Authenticator. I don't hate Microsoft Authenticator. I hate SMS-based ones, but the vast majority of them I don't hate. It's just that like people just rely upon them to be these super secret things that they aren't. That they're just not as secure as they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I think there's one thing I've learned with Google is that if I'm trying to, as long as I've got my phone and I'm authenticated on my phone through my Gmail app, when I want to access my Gmail account anywhere, I actually get a over-the-air an OTA alert that says, "Is this you trying to log in?" And it says your geolocation, IP address, and if you hit no, then it automatically rejects that session.
Yeah, those are called push notifications, and those I like even more, right? Because then usually they let me say the Microsoft one just says, do you want to log in or not? It has a session number. It doesn't really give you a lot of information. That one can be man in the middle pretty easily. The Google one actually says, are you logging in from Tampa, Florida? It's funny. It says Windows NT 10 versus Windows 10. I'm like, can you not just do an if then and convert who knows Windows NT these days, right? Just the average consumer. But those at least give you a place. And it works quite well. But then my company, for a while, they went to, I don't know whether it was a Google VPN or what. Every time I logged in, I would show up coming from Texas or Georgia, or, the VPN would virtually take me into different places, which made that code that Google sent me, are you logging in from Washington, D.C.? I guess that's where I'm logging in today. So it was teaching you to ignore the location code. But I like it better. So push notification, put phone-based apps that don't rely upon your phone number with push-based notification with a little bit of information to help you not fall for a man-in-the-middle attack. Those are among the strongest solutions out there.
So I love that. So Aaron's got a question. How secure would be a non-free VPN? And once authenticated through the VPN, then you would use MFA. I don't think that would make a difference though, right?
No. I mean, and let me say, they're all hackable. They're all the push notification thing that I just told you, hackable. It's stronger than SMS based, but it's hackable. So really, and I'm maybe taking away the finish here. What I recommend in the book, what I recommend to anybody is whatever MFA solution you deploy, whether it's SMS based or token based or phone based or push based, learn about the common types of attacks, like the Kevin Mitnick man-in-the-middle attack. Would that work against your solution? And if it does, you need to let yourself and any end users you help with these devices know you need to pay attention to URLs. You're still susceptible to normal phishing attacks. So that's my whole thing. Or if you use SMS-based, there's all kinds of little SMS things that you should know. You should know that about what a SIM swap attack is. And hey, if your phone stops working and says you're out of network, you need to notify IT, grab somebody else's phone and call IT because somebody could have compromised your phone number in SMS based. Or if you get a code that says it's from Google support, maybe it's not from Google support, So you just need to educate yourself and anybody that's relying upon, because whatever MFA type of solution that you have, it's going to be hackable a couple different ways. And you should make people aware of what those ways are. Matter of fact, FIDO2, I can hack FIDO2 solutions. But one of the things I love about FIDO2, and FIDO2 is an alliance, is that they literally are the only solution out there that threat models all the ways you can break into them. What are the ways they offset it? Which are the ways are still left that people could break in, and let you kind of make a decision, is this an acceptable level of threat risk? And I love that. I wish all the MFA solutions did that. Instead, they're like, buy our thing and we protect you and you're gonna be so much safer. I see ones out there that literally say, cannot be hacked. They literally have the words cannot be hacked. And I'm like, oh my God. If anyone says that, run.
A while ago, about 3 years ago, I was doing an event here in Georgia and I was hosting it. I was moderating the event, and this new startup had come out, and the CEO of the company comes out on stage. And if you want to know how you lose 300 chief information security officers and CIOs in a minute, he goes, we are 100% secure. And I have never seen a crowd go from, oh, like so depleted so fast from just that one statement. So Larry Rosen, my good friend Larry, has a question. He goes, what's the best way to protect yourself and company users during the login process beyond MFA? Is there anything outside of MFA maybe that we should add into the login process?
Yeah. So I don't have to guess about this. Educate yourself about social engineering and the common types of social engineering. That's 50 to 90% of all successful attacks involve some type of social engineering. Number two, be very patched. Be patched against the common internet accessible things. Then don't reuse passwords and use MFA where you can. But those 3 or 4 things. Educate yourself about social engineering. And then, by the way, that's what my company KnowBe4 does, but I'm at KnowBe4 because that's the #1 problem, not the other way around. That's why I left Microsoft and came to KnowBe4, because I implemented all these MFA solutions and all my clients are still being hacked because of unpatched software and social engineering. But so make sure you educate yourself and your users about social engineering. Number 2, you need to patch and patch better than you probably are. Number 3, use MFA where you can, but educate yourself on the types of attacks that could be successful against your type of MFA, and then have good password policy, hygiene. Don't, educate people not to reuse. The average person has 5 to 7 passwords that they reuse on over 170 websites. It's just asking for trouble. So those 3 or 4 things, depending on how you count, are almost 99% of all risk.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So we have one final question from our good friend, Mr. McQuiggan, who says, with jealousy deep in my heart for how he starts off his question, hello from the Caribbeans. Roger, if you wanted to fix one security issue and make it go away forever, what would it be?
Well, I mean, I should say social engineering, right? But it'd be great to get rid of social engineering. But that's a complex thing. What I think would be at least another good thing. So social engineering is my answer, and James would agree probably. But I really think like patching that just patched and didn't ask the end user for permission, just did it. Like now we have all this cloud-based software that just, you don't ask to patch Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or something like that. Or like when Microsoft Exchange got compromised by those couple of 0 days, well, it only impacted on-premises ones because the online ones, Exchange Online and all, they just patched. And there is some percentage of people, when I worked at Microsoft, I learned this, for every patch that's pushed, somewhere between 10 to 25% of the people impacted by that patch never patch ever. And so even though it's not the #1 problem, I wish every device, router, switch, just patched itself and didn't ask for our permission.
See, I wish there was more accountability to that. So I think an organization should get a free pass of 2 patches a year. Anything beyond that, we should start talking about development malpractice. If your lawyer filed an appeal once a month on something, we would fire the lawyer. Yet in software, it's become completely acceptable. We've got a thing, it's a holiday. It's our holiday, but really every IT person dreads it. It's called Patch Tuesday. Because come Patch Tuesday, you get a bunch of patches, and now you've got to start prioritizing them, right? And for those who don't know, security people don't patch stuff. We're not the people who go in and patch it. We're the consultants. We're the, hey, we need to patch this system. It's probably a top level priority. What do you need to get it patched? And IT is going to go and look at it and go, well, we can't really patch it because in order to patch it, we got to take it offline. We can't take it offline because everyone uses it. We don't know what time to take it offline. We got to coordinate with all the business people, and then you got to go coordinate with all the business units. By then, just so you know, by then, threat actors are already in your system. There was a report I read about a month ago, and I talked about it on the practitioner brief, Roger. And it was a company, and I forgot who it was, and they set up a honeypot for a vulnerability, and they disclosed the vulnerability, and they wanted to see how soon after disclosing the vulnerability, threat actors were there. Well, within an hour, there was already some scanning. Within 5 hours, there was tremendous amount of scanning. Within 24 hours, there are already exploits being taken advantage of for that specific vulnerability. Meaning there were already within 24 hours. And that to me is just.
Yeah, that's what, so I wouldn't give them any, I wouldn't do any exceptions. And let me say, at Microsoft, I understood exceptions and there's things that it broke. The problem is that, like you said, we need to rewire our software so that patching something doesn't mean taking something down, or you have a, some type of instance that stays up. I mean, how does Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of them do it? But also people are like, well, it breaks things, and patches do break things. It's normally not because of the vendor. Normally it's because of some third-party interaction and it wasn't coded right. But, there's been so many, as somebody just said, Marin just said, like this, the print nightmare and the exchange thing. Like there's all these supply chain attacks that are literally just taking out tens of thousands of organizations. I do hear about, oh, I applied a patch and it broke something, but it's like 1 or 2 or a small percentage of companies. I haven't read the story where I applied the patch and it wiped out 10% of the people that applied it, right? So there is a risk calculation, but the risk calculation is you need to be patched. And I wish it was taken out of people's hands. And what's my one thing I would want, if I was the security god, is that there's automatic patching. Think about all the routers. Like, oh, there's a new router exploit. I forget the name.
RealTech SDK.
Well, yeah. What was that one?
RealTech SDK. The SD. You've got it on your Dell laptop. You've got it on your HP laptop. It's literally what powers your mic and camera and everything on your device. It's that SDK.
Yeah, and they're going to, and everybody, it impacts hundreds of devices, right? Routers, cameras, switches, everything. And they're going to create a patch. Who's going to play?
There's already a patch. They've created a patch. The patch is out.
There's different products. There's like 100 different products, and each product has a slightly different deployment of the patch. But how many people are going to deploy that patch? 20%?
So within 9 days. So the patch and the vulnerability were disclosed on August 15th. For those who don't know, today's August 24th. Just in case someone just woke up and joined the webinar and were the first thing you plugged into this morning. As of this morning, I reported on the RealTech SDK on the practitioner brief literally 3 hours ago, right? There were just 12% of all systems were patched. 12%. 12.
And let me say again, I really think I'm saying this accurately. So that would be the people that can deploy that particular patch. There are hundreds of systems that you have to deploy. They have to implement that patch into their system to be able to patch it. You can't just directly deploy the RealTech SDK patch. You have to deploy the patch that vendor allows to be applied to that appliance or that router or that modem or whatever.
And then you've got to adjust it, and then you've got to push it out to your consumers over the air. Right?
Yeah. But I'm literally on some of my devices going check for updates, nothing.
Yeah. Well,
and I know it's vulnerable.
So that's where you disconnect them.
Well, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you then.
That's why you hardwire your, my entire stations are hardwired. I don't use Wi-Fi.
That sounds like this somehow doesn't surprise me. It's new information, but I'm like, yep, that applies. I can see that completely.
I don't use Wi-Fi. I refuse to use Wi-Fi on my workstations. I won't do it. To me, that's the greatest little piece of risk on the planet. Why use Wi-Fi? If you're at home and you can put a router close to your workstation, hardwire it.
Yeah, I've done that for a lot of, I was that way in a lot of my houses, and I just opened a box. I just moved and opened a box, and I got 100-foot, 100 base T cable and stuff. I'm like, am I going to use it, this and that? Because like your guests come over, with their phones and they want to do something, and then guests show up with laptops. And I once wired, when I was in charge of a healthcare system, a moderate to large healthcare system, I wired every patient room with 4 10-base T cables. And, thinking I was preparing for the future, not realizing wireless was just going to sweep through the world. And I'm thinking that's a lot of fiber cable, and all the hospitals I was in charge of, a lot of additional expense. And then wireless takes over. It's hard to fight against it, James. Even if you have a good idea and good reasons, People don't care. They're like, oh, is it easier? Like MFA, we're talking about MFA. There's all these people out there that think we actually need to make stronger, better MFA, like, oh, we haven't made this better, stronger device. No, we've got plenty of strong MFA out there. And the average person doesn't want to even put in a password. I don't know anyone that doesn't want to just turn on their device, their phone, and just be able to go to whatever they want to go. And they are a little bit bothered that they have to put in a pen but they can accept it. But if you give them a 5-factor MFA device, it will never sell because people don't want to do that, even if it might be more secure. That everybody wants to do the least amount, let me say the general population, not us, not the royal we, but the most people want the least amount of interruption of their life and continue to do what they want to do. They don't want to even put in a password, much less have to use MFA.
So Aaron has a question, and this is a funny one. So what about ensuring encryption through your home router, IPsec, and then MFA? I'm just trying to prove there's no 100% technical solution, LOL.
No,
so
correct.
Here's the thing about encryption. So I had this conversation literally with someone yesterday. I was interviewing someone yesterday for a position, and he goes, he started talking about encryption, very elementary. So I didn't want to tackle the person, but I kind of was like, so what is your best practice around encryption? And it gave me a BS answer that you get out of a vendor notebook that sells encryption. And I go, have you considered key management? Because encryption is all about the keys.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have good key management, you can encrypt all the data you want. You know how many times people encrypt databases and then they put the decryption keys unhashed in the cloud on an open database somewhere that someone can get to?
Are you ready for my favorite response to it? I mean, just on Bruce Schneier said, it was over an SSL vulnerability years ago, but he was being interviewed, Bruce Schneier, like an informal mentor of mine. But he said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he said, if you're worried about this SSL vulnerability, you have a whole lot of other stuff handled far better than the rest of us. Like, think about it. Have you ever heard, oh my God, they get hit by ransomware? How did they get in? I was using TLS version 1.1. God, I should have updated to version 1.2. Like, encryption is not the weak link in most attacks.
And encryption isn't the mother of all security. Let's just put it at that. Encryption is like MFA. It's another step in a defense in depth kind of strategy, but you want to base everything on data. Like the book by yours truly, Data Driven Computer Defense.
Now I am going to have to pay you.
That is the book, because at the end of the day, you want to use, if you want to know what's the right MFA to deploy, you've got to know data. How do your users interact with it? 70% of you said tokens, but this is where the disconnect between business and security exists, right? Because here's where the disconnect is. 70% of you said tokens, and I'm not trying to brush up on anyone's bad side, but I want to give you a business point of view here. Tokens are not convenient for the average user. People lose stuff all the time. If I need to ask you anything, how many of you were looking for something you lost just this morning? You may have misplaced it. You may have put it somewhere you don't remember. These tokens are small and they're easily lost. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to deploy tokens in your business. People are going to lose them. People are going to misplace them. They're not going to be able to log on. They're not going to be able to get access. The business is going to get frustrated. They're going to come after you. They're going to say, well, disable multi-factor for this user because they need to get access. And then someone forgets to reapply it because that person maybe doesn't get a token. Things fall between the cracks. And if you need any evidence at all to what I'm just saying, I want to point you to the 2017 breach of Equifax. Equifax early on was one of the most secure corporations in the country. They had one of the best security programs. In fact, many of the CISOs and senior VPs that lead the Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies today come from the school of Equifax and their original CISO. But they weren't business driven, they were security driven, and they employed tokens. Make that whatever you want. It wasn't really friendly to the business. So what happened? That CISO moved on. They brought in someone else. And that person, in meeting all the stakeholders in the first 90, 100 days of the system, heard security is a problem. They slow down business. They slow down business. They slow down business. So what did they do? Turn around and opened everything up. And by opening everything up and really allowing the business to really scale and grow, they forgot to take care of the basics. And then come the idea of the unpatched Apache stress, which is how they got in. But if there's a use case that was done by Sarah Reese over at Augusta University. And Sarah, I went through her workshop on the entire timeline and the entire history of Equifax. And it's probably one of the most interesting talks I've ever been in. Sarah Reese over at Augusta University. Her talk may be online. I will try to get Sarah on the podcast to do this talk again.
Yeah. Let me say hardware, you were talking about hardware tokens. In some cases, so phone as a token is a big thing and growing because of all those reasons you talked about. But there, in some places, the states or the countries say that if you're going to require the employee to use a cell phone, you have to provide them a cell phone. So so you have to give them a second cell phone. That becomes a more expensive hardware token that's more exploitable. And so some businesses say, instead of providing this second cell phone, it's cheaper for me to provide this hardware token that's less likely to be hacked. And I mean, so let me just say there's many use cases, but I like what you say, which is look at the data. And every organization I've been in, there is a certain type of MFA that seems to fit more. Like some companies, biometrics, like they've already got a biometric hand scanner to get into the building, and they had to do a biometric so that if they move to a biometric, and I'm not a fan of biometrics, certainly single factor biometrics for sure, that it just fits in there. And there's some companies that smart cards or something like a smart card or a hardware token just seems to fit into it. And then other ones like everyone got a phone and you can use a phone and have to manage hardware tokens. We'll use the cell phone. So it's funny is there's this fit and then I can take the exact same solution, phone as a token to another place. I'm like, I can't. We'd have to buy everybody cell phones. And so there really is this fit that goes on. The first step is finding out what solution even works with the apps you want to protect. That's number one.
Indeed. Start there, right? But get the data before you start deploying and thinking of what you want to do. And that's that. So we're 6 minutes over and people are still here. Wow. So we must have been very interesting. So Roger, thank you so much. Everyone who tuned into the webinar, thank you so much for being part of today's webinar. I hope you took away some really, really valuable, information out of this one. Roger, I'm sure I'll have him on the show in about a month or two again. I try to get Roger on the show as much as humanly possible with the time he has available. So thank you to Roger. Thank you to everyone for watching and being a part of today's webinar. Have a great rest of your day, folks. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
We are just waiting. I think a few people just want to stay and hang out, Roger.
I can't tell James my secrets, my Equifax secrets.
I'll go ahead and close the participant room. And that way we can get everyone. That is the one feature I've asked Zoom for. Like you gotta allow us to be able to close the room and keep the panelists as the panelists. But we're free and clear now.
Yeah, so I went to consult to Equifax. One of my good friends got hired as just under the CISO, and he accepted the job the day before it went public. And they'd known about it for weeks, but he had no idea what was going on, right? He's like, holy shit, his boss got fired. Like he walked into a quagmire, but I got to go in there and take a look at it. It was amazing, right? That they, how long they knew, the problem there was they just didn't realize how important good patching was, right? Like who wouldn't patch a web server? Well, that's times 100 other companies, right? They actually knew that they needed to patch it, but they were finger pointing about whose responsibility it was to patch it, and all that other stuff. But it was an interesting thing going on there.
Yeah, it's I know a lot of people that worked at Equifax, and I've had and some people who were fired. Well, one person only was fired. Everyone else was allowed to resign. There was one person who was fired, and that was Graham, and everyone else was kind of told to take a early retirement per se. But I know the people that were there before the current leadership. And the people that were there before that leadership are good security people, really good.
Yeah, I tell people they don't have worse people. Like you think they're like, oh, they're horrible security. Well, you apparently don't know most U.S. organizations.
Yeah, most people don't get it. They just don't, unfortunately. It's
Hey, when's the baby due?
Baby's due in October 20th, technically, but we had a doctor's appointment last week, and they're saying we're probably going to push for a 38-week delivery, which is 3 weeks earlier. So we can expect baby from September 30th, meaning in just a little over a month, to, October 10th.
And this is your third kid, fourth kid?
Second.
Second. Okay.
My daughter will be 16 next week, and she will now have another baby brother because her mom brought a boy from her husband, and now she will be 16 years older than her younger brother, which should be a blast in one way.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a brother-in-law who did the same thing. He's happy. Got his kid, and the youngest one, yours is babies, and they're now going into college. And he's still having a good life. He has great relationships with him. You're a better parent when you're older,
That is also very, very true. You're far more patient. I mean, my house is getting remodeled as we speak. Like, we're going through this massive remodel, and next month we're getting our floors redone. And so 4 or 5 days we can't be home. So I've booked my wife she was thinking that we're going to go, stay at a hotel next to the house, but I booked her a really nice, fancy little place to go put her feet up and just.
Sweet, dude. You are a smart guy. You are a smart guy.
Spot out. I'm like, get her spotted out. Like, booked a hotel with a nice pool and a good spa. And I'm like, go and just relax. And
awesome, man. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, man. You're always great. Thanks for plugging my books and all that stuff. You're a great guy. We're actually doing budgets today, and James is on vacation, but me and Eric were putting in huge plugs for you today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And let me say, you're already in our 2 favorite. But there's another guy. They're like, where should we spend the money? And we were just going on and on about you. So, and we could tell that. Our boss was kind of thinking about trying to push this other one. We're like, he's good, but no, Phil. And me and Eric were pretty vocal. So I think it recalibrated things, hopefully.
I'm grateful for KnowBefore's support of the show. You guys are one of the only sponsors I really enjoy working with who doesn't have the let us overly promote our brand. It's natural with you guys. It's the right tech. By the way, it's the right way. It's why people love KnowBefore.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, I'll let you go. I'm actually going to go get a shingle shot, of all things. I've had me and my wife have had 2 friends that got shingles as old people. I'm turning 55 next month, but our 2 friends got shingles, and they're 2 different families, destroyed the rest of their lives. Like, they're just in horrendous pain all the time. I'm like, my wife got her vaccine. I'm like, I'm going to go get that shot. If it's just 2 shots and it stops me from getting what they got, one guy's
I'm going to go get it. Yeah, it's
I hate growing old.
Yeah, join the club, man. Join the club. When you're
no. You got an infant. You got to be all Mr. Energetic again.
I am. I'm actually finishing here, and I've taken a few hours off this afternoon. I'm gonna go swim, and
sweet,
and just come back and continue working, because work never stops. But I got to do some mental health hours every now and then.
Yeah. Okay,
All
my
right.
friend.
Talk to you soon, Roger.
Take care, buddy.
Bye.